Hello grade 6 and welcome to this session 3 of our lesson, which is decimal fractions. Before we start, let's make some backup. We know that from grade 5 that 1 over 10 give me 0.1, which is 1/10. This is as a fraction, this is as a decimal number. 1 over 100, it's 1/100th, give me 0.01 as a decimal number. 1 over 1000, it's 1/1000th, which give me 0.001. Okay, thousandth, this is tenth, this is hundredth, this is thousandth. So we say about it 1/1000th. Okay, now we are going to learn a new concept, how to convert a decimal fraction into a decimal number. To convert it, take an example like 14 over 10. What to do? Take the given fraction numerator, which is 14, then mark the decimal point after one digit if the denominator is 10. Put it after 2 digits if the denominator is 100. Put it after 3 digits if the denominator is 1000, and so on. Let's make an application. We look at the denominator. We have 1 0, it's 10. So the decimal point will enter only one digit. So the answer will be 1.4. Okay? 725 over 100. The denominator contains 2 zeros. So the decimal point will enter 2 zeros, which are the tenth and hundredth. So the decimal point will be here. So the answer will be 7.25. Now, can you write this one as a decimal number? Some think that the answer will be 7.5. And some thought that it's 7.0. But they are all wrong. We said that to write the answer as a decimal number, the denominator must be power of 10. 10 or 100 or 1000 or 10,000 and so on. So, is it a decimal fraction? Can I write it as a decimal number? So, to write it as a decimal number, it must be a decimal fraction. Is it a decimal fraction? How can I know it? Let's discover. Decimal fractions. So, let's see. What are the decimal fractions? Decimal fractions are fractions whose denominator is 10 or 100 or 1000 and so on, just like these fractions. Okay, if you have other than these fractions, can we say about it a decimal fraction? It depends. Also, we can say it's a decimal fraction if its denominator can be written as 10 or 100 or 1000. It means I have to change the given fraction into a fraction whose denominator 10 or 100 or 1000. Let's take an example. Check whether the following fractions are decimal fractions or not. Look, it's 13 over 10. It's very clear it's a decimal fraction. Why? Because the denominator is 10. Now look, 17 over 50. If I directly look, I'm going to say no, it's not a decimal fraction. Why? Because the denominator is not 10, neither 100 and nor 1000. But they told me it's also a decimal fraction if you change the denominator into 10 or 100 or 1000. In another word, I'm going to find an equivalent fraction to this fraction just by multiplying the numerator and the denominator by the same number, or by dividing the numerator and the denominator by the same number. In this case, you have 50. If you multiply it by 2, you will get 100. But whenever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator. So we are going to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 2. The answer will be 34 over 100. Now, what can you say? Is it a decimal fraction? Yes, this fraction is equivalent to this fraction. So yes, it is a decimal fraction. Now, how to convert any fraction into a decimal fraction, then into a decimal number. First step, we have to convert the fraction into an equivalent fraction whose denominator is 10 or 100 or 1000. How? By looking at the denominator. And if it is a factor of 10 or 100 or 1000, so we can change it into an equivalent fraction. Let's take an example. Can you write 3 over 5 as a decimal fraction, then write it as a decimal number? Let's take the first look. Is it a decimal fraction? We can't say directly. I have to try to change it first. So look, 5 is a factor of 10, or we can say that 10 is a multiple of 5. We can multiply 5 by 2 to give me 10. So I want to multiply the denominator by 2, so we will multiply also the numerator by 2 to get 3 times 2, it's 6. 5 times 2, it's 10. Now, is it a decimal fraction? Yes, 6 over 10, which is the equivalent fraction of 3 over 5, is a decimal fraction whose denominator is 10. Now, this fraction is ready to write it as a decimal number. How to write it as a decimal number? We said that to write a fraction, a decimal fraction as a decimal number, we look at the zeros in the denominator. We have 1 0, so in the decimal part I have 1 digit. Here we will have a decimal point. Can I write it 0.6? No. We put 0 in the empty space. So the answer will be 0.6. And it is read as 0 and 6/10 or 6/10. Okay? Take another example. 7 over 5. Can I change it into an equivalent fraction and make it as a decimal fraction? Yes. 10 is a multiple of 5, so we multiply it by 2, and whenever you do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator, so multiply them by 2 to get 14 over 10. Now, can you write it as a decimal number? Yes, it's a decimal fraction, so I can write it as a decimal number. Can you write this one as a decimal number? No, we can't. This one? Yes, we can, because it's a decimal fraction. So we have 1 0, we take 1 digit, so the answer will be 1.4. 1 and 4/10. Now, these are some formulas that may help you to make decimal fractions. When you see in the denominator 2, you have to multiply it by 5 to give you 10. And whenever you see 5, you multiply it by 2 to give you 10. Okay, 5 and 2 are friends. If you have 2 and you want to find the answer and write it as 100, I know that 5 times 2 give me 10. I have 1 extra 0, so I put here an extra 0. So 2 times 50 give me 100. Similarly, 50 times what give me 100? It's 2. 5, its friend is 2. 5 times 2 give me 10. I have 1 extra 0, so I put here an extra 0. So we notice that whenever you see 5, you multiply it by 2. Whenever you see 2, you multiply it by 5, because both give you the answer, which is 10. Okay, so 2 and 5 are friends. They give you 10. Okay. If you see 20, similarly, 2, its friend is 5. 2 times 5 give you 10. You have extra 0 here, so the answer will be 100. Oh, if you see 4, what to do? The friend of 4 is 25. So if you multiply 4 times 25, the answer will be 100. And if you have 25, what should we multiply it? We should multiply it by 4. So 4 and 25 are friends. They both give me 100. Whenever you see 4, I multiply it by 25. And whenever I see 25, I multiply it by 4. Okay, we are working on the denominator. We want to change it into 10 or 100 or 1000. Okay, if I see 8, I have to multiply it by 125. The friend of 8 is 125. The answer will be 1000. Okay, I will put a comma here. Similarly, when I see 125, you multiply it by 8 and the answer will be 1000. So we have here two new friends, which are 8 and 125. If you multiply by them together, you will get 1000. So whenever you see in the denominator 2, you multiply it by 5. Whenever you see 5, you multiply it by 2. Whenever you see in the denominator 4, you multiply it by 25. And whenever you see 25, you multiply it by 4 to get 100. Whenever you see in the denominator 8, you multiply it by 125. And whenever you see 125, you multiply it by 8 to get 1000. And don't forget, whatever you multiply the denominator, you have to multiply the numerator by the same number to get an equivalent fraction. Now we are changing into decimal fractions. Why? To write it as a decimal number. And by this, we finished our session. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.